Prophet ﷺ had the most beautiful and illuminated face, such that no one described him except that they compared him to the full moon. They said that his face was the shashat al-haq. It was like a screen unto al-haq, unto the truth itself. That's that. It's very interesting. Like I was mentioning in a previous class, a seerah class, that the Prophet ﷺ, he moves to Medina to Munawwara. We know this. He was living in Mecca and he moves to Medina. Now in Medina, there were many Jewish people living in Medina. And so a question for you guys: why were there so many Jews living in Medina at that time? It doesn't make any sense. Medina was a desert town in the middle of nowhere. So why did the Jews move thousands of miles from much nicer places, from places where there was water, places where there was fresh fruit? Why did they move there to go and live in Medina? It doesn't seem to make any sense, does it? Why did they do that? Fantastic. Yes, because the Jews were waiting for a prophet. The Jews knew, according to their own books in the Torah, they knew that there's a prophet coming and he's going to make hijrah, he's going to make a journey and he's going to migrate to a land full of date palms, and they very quickly identified it as Medina. Now what's very interesting is that the Jews, they moved to Medina, and one of the first things that they did was they established schools, mashallah. They had the importance of education. They established schools. What would they teach in those schools? You know what they would teach in those madrasas? They would teach the physical description of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's what they would teach. That's why, what does it say in the Quran? It says that the Jews, they know you better than they know their own children. They know you better than they know their own children. They knew the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's physical description 100%. Why am I mentioning this? Because when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he enters into Medina to Munawwara, the greatest Jewish rabbi of that time, the most knowledgeable Jewish rabbi at that time, his name was Abdul Salam. He sees the Prophet ﷺ's face and he says, this is not the face of a liar. He sees his face and he goes, I saw his face, and I said, listen, wajil kadhab. This is not the face of a liar. And then he goes, I heard him utter words. I heard the first words he hears from the Prophet ﷺ. Prophet ﷺ, he comes into Medina, he says, Ayyuhan nas, O people, afshu salam, spread peace. Wa atimu ta'am, feed people, feed the poor and needy, and feed people. وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ النِّيَامِ, and pray at night when people sleep. تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ بِالسَّلَامِ, you enter paradise with ease. Abdul Salam hears this, and what is it? أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ مُحَمَّدٌ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. He enters Islam straight away. Immediately enters Islam, because he saw all of the signs in his blessed face. So as soon as he saw his face, that's the face we've been learning about. That's the face I learned about as a child. That he's got a complete physical description of the Prophet ﷺ. He sees him, enters Islam. The most knowledgeable out of all of the Jews at that time. His contempt and displeasure could be seen on his face due to his pristine clarity. The trustworthy chosen one who calls to good, like the light of the full moon removes darkness. This is poetry from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Yeah? The trustworthy chosen one who calls to good, like the light of the full moon removes darkness. What else? He had a large forehead, which is indicative of his immense intelligence, and perfectly arched eyebrows. He had beautiful eyes, which were ad'aj. Prophet's eyes were incredible. Like they say, his eyes, the blackness of his eyes was extremely dark, and the whiteness was extremely white. There was this beautiful contrast. The eyes of the Prophet are amongst his greatest miracles. These are eyes, just think about this. The Prophet is somebody who met the Prophet, believed in him, and then died on that belief. Yeah, it's somebody who met him. In other words, this is somebody where the Prophet ﷺ gazed upon him or her. That's what it means. So it's possible, the scholars of Aqeedah, of Islamic belief, they say it's possible for somebody to have met the Prophet just once, 1 second. Yeah, it's possible for somebody to have met the Prophet ﷺ just once, one glance from him, he becomes Muslim, and then he leaves that room and he dies. Never ever prayed, never ever fasted, never ever given charity. And yet that person, that companion, is greater than all of the scholars of Islam put together. Yeah, like one companion is greater than all of the Muslims that came after that put together. Like Imam Hassan al-Basri and Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jailani and whoever you want to name, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, you put them all together, you times it by a billion or whatever, and they don't equal the virtue of somebody who had one glance from the Prophet ﷺ. Just once, he looked at that person once, entered Islam, is greater than all of them. Now, what kind of eyes are those that one glance from him can transform your state, to the extent now that you become greater than all of the polity of Islam put together. All of these greats, called millions and millions and millions of transformed beings. These are eyes that are not normal eyes.